Hey, welcome back. It's Mrs. Grosso here, and we're starting a new unit this week on deviance, one of my favorite topics, and one of yours as well. So let's do the thing. Or not, computer. All right, so throughout the whole entire semester, we've been talking about things that people do that are weird. We talk about norms, we talk about um, taboos, we've been talking about all different kinds of things like that. Well, deviance is when you violate that cultural norm. So if you do it, it can be knowingly and it can be unintentional. So anyone who's breaking any rule, written or not, is technically considered a deviant. So I know we're not at school, and I know you're thinking about school, so you'll have an easy time envisioning the hallway at Norton High. And you'll think about what side you're supposed to walk on. Now, everyone knows that you're supposed to walk on the right side, just like if you're driving a car. However, there are groups of people who walk on the wrong side of the hallway and interfere with everyone trying to get to where they're going. Those people, they're the deviants. So if you choose to walk on the left-hand side, you're a deviant. It also can be like social choices, fashions, things like that, that make somebody an outsider. So it could be the fact that your family doesn't have as much money, the type of car you drive, the type of clothes you wear. It could be anything. It's like I said, a deviant isn't necessarily like a murderer. A deviant is somebody who's breaking a recognized norm or falls without outside of what is considered to be normal. So, all right, you guys have seen The Outsiders. You may have read the book. So we have here this group of young gentlemen. They were on the wrong side of the tracks and they got into a brawl and some murder went down and they had to run away. But this book, this whole idea of the outsiders, that really just plays up what deviance actually is. It's a group of people. Sometimes they are intentionally placed in a deviant subcategory, and sometimes it's unintentional. Sometimes it has to do with, like I said, how much money your family has, or perception based on who you are. We're going to get into it later, but a lot of times too, what happens is you get labeled as a deviant because of some behavior that you may have engaged in, or maybe you haven't even engaged in it. If you think about that movie Easy A, if you haven't seen it, it's a good watch. For sociological standpoints, it's not like that. All right, it's not that great, but it does play to the fact that sometimes if you create a label for yourself as being a certain way, deviant, not deviant, promiscuous, what have you, it can follow you around and be detrimental to yourself later on. So it's you know, once a fool, always a fool, I guess, but that's not truly how society should function. So, what is deviance? Like, where is it coming from? So, we have to have social control in order to figure out what is right and what is wrong. And we've been talking about this with structural functional approach. And then we talked about it again with culture when we talked about norms. How do I know what's normal? How do I know what I'm supposed to want to do? A lot of my seniors out there, they're feeling that societal pressure to long for certain things that you guys aren't going to have in a traditional sense. That's society telling you that this is how it should be, and then you feel that pressure as if it's a rite of passage. Also, social control can really make people feel good about themselves or conversely bad about themselves. It tells us what's right and what's wrong. It tells us just all those milestones that we should be reaching. So it tells us that when I go to the beach, I shouldn't wear a snowsuit, not just because it's hot, but because I'll look silly. So social control is out there. You have to have social control because you have to know what rules you're breaking in order to be labeled a deviant. So without control, zero deviance. Because of deviance, if we're breaking that social control, we have to have a formal response to violations of laws. And that's where the criminal justice system is born. With culture, we talked about how if you guys were on that deserted island, how you would formulate a culture that's similar to something you know. You can't live without culture. And the justice system, a way of punishing those who are stepping outside of those norms is a part of cultural behavior. So you have to have a way to categorize deviance, you have to have a way to punish deviance in order for that norm to be raised up to a certain standard. So if you know you're not supposed to be going 90 miles an hour on the highway, then you have to have somebody to enforce that rule. The criminal justice system has to exist. There is a lot of sketchy research that has been done over the years with biology and crime. And it's not necessarily like sketchy, just sketchy in a bad way. It's just like not fully developed. So there were a lot of evolutionary theorists who looked at men and women and how women in traditional societies, not all societies, but in a lot of like patriarchal, like man headed societies, women often represent that mothering and nurturing type person, the gatherer, that kind of persona, where men are more about the hunter. They're leaving the home and they're going and getting something. So, some researchers believe that men are more apt to commit crimes because it is ingrained in male biology for them to be the hunter, that if faced with hardship, men are more likely to go out and steal, join up with illegal organizations than women, because women, being of a more nurturing sense, and again, this is research studies not completed by myself, these are not my ideas, but the idea of others was that women are more apt to seek traditional ways of earning wealth and to fall more within the norm in order to maintain the ability to be with their children. That men are more short sighted and that they are more likely to put things in on the line, knowing that the mother will be there to take care of the children. However, they feel as though they need to be aggressive in going out and getting that kill, if you will, in terms of getting money. So, just some controversial sociology things out there. This is how crime is defined by the dictionary. So if you are a deviant and you're committing a crime, it's good to know what does it mean to commit a crime. So obviously we know any criminal activity, when you're breaking a law, that would be a crime. It also is defined by serious wrongdoing. And also too, something that is considered sometimes criminal is a foolish or senseless or shameful act. So if somebody says that the behavior is criminal, therefore you're a deviant, it doesn't necessarily always mean in the world of sociology that a law is being broken. Sometimes it is just a foolish act. Getting a face tattoo, that might make you a deviant. That may seem criminal. But again, it's just something that society might deem as being not ideal. A lot of crimes are committed by people who are psychologically normal. So most people who are committing crimes aren't like killing cats in, people's sheds. They're mostly just normal people. Most crimes are petty, so it's like simple theft and things like that. Obviously, if you ever watch the news, you're going to hear about like all these murders and all these horrible things that happen. But remember, news outlets are also trying to make money, so they're going to really harp on some of the more negative things, where most crime that happens on a daily basis is just breaking into cars, stealing from stores, that kind of stuff. And those people are typically psychologically normal and they're just looking to get by. Obviously, there is drug crimes and there are people who commit crimes because they are in seek of money for habits. But, you know, that's a different subset. And one way that a lot of people have researched to find crime to stop is to promote a positive self image, particularly in boys. It can help prevent people from being delinquent. So if you hold yourself to a higher standard, then you're less likely to commit crimes that are, like legally punishable. Whereas, we all like being, like I said, being a deviant, being labeled something, whether it be positive or negative, is out of your hands. So, um, just like one thing to take away from today's notes, and this is the last one for now, is that deviance, I keep saying it, upholds cultural norms. So, going to school, going to work, having a family, being a good person, those cultural norms. Um, but society defines you. So you can never really define yourself, and deviants arise as society sees them to be deviant. So some of you might look back from when we were back in school and say, oh, my teachers totally thought I was a deviant. I was leaving class every day for 20 minutes, walking the halls. They totally labeled me a deviant. And that might be true. But now you just walk in your house and no one knows that you're being a deviant. So it's just the way people define you. And it doesn't mean you can't redefine yourself. So some of you guys are going to go off to college and you're going to have an opportunity to remake who you are, or you're going to just graduate from high school and go to work and be the hardest working, most responsible person in the entire world, or not. It's just you get to remake yourself many times in life. So both norms and the way people define rule breaking involve social power. So don't forget, the people with the power get to determine what the laws are, and the people with the power get to determine who gets certain labels. And I know that with this college admissions scandal, a lot of people have been talking about how these wealthy white people are just kind of like buying their way to lesser sentences. And then if it was other populations doing similar things, that the punishments would be a lot more harsh. And that is likely true. But again, it's all about that power. And typically, those with power dodge deviant labels. So, with that, I hope you guys have a really awesome week. And if you have questions, let me know. Bye.